We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Labor's toxic taxes have tanked the housing market. ANZ Bank today reports Sydney house prices could fall by almost 15%, the worst crash in more than 4 decades. Will the Prime Minister finally admit Labor's broken promises on capital gains tax and negative gearing have made millions of Australian homeowners worse off?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I'm asked about housing issues, and in the budget it is true that we had measures that were aimed at addressing the challenges that are facing young Australians when it comes to owning a house. I note that Scott Pape, the barefoot investor, someone who's well known, not always part of a cheer squad for the government, wrote in the Herald Sun, average house prices have increased by more than 400% since 2000, partly on the back of taxpayer-funded landlord welfare. They've grown much faster than workers' wages, which is why we're in this pickle. Somewhere along the way we started treating houses like a share price, something to check, brag about and borrow against. We forgot what they're actually for. A house is for living in. A house is for living in. And what he went on to say was that the people who are concerned certainly aren't the young people finally getting a foot in the door. What we have had is creating a change in the way that the tax system operates in order to give first home buyers a fair crack, so that when last Saturday people were going along to an auction for an existing home, they were not competing against investors seeking to negatively gear the property, but they were competing against other people who wanted a roof over their head. A roof over their head. And I don't want to be a Prime Minister who leads a country that sees growing inequality, that sees the opportunity for people to get into their first home as being defined on whether mum or dad can help them. I want people to have the opportunity to be the first in their family to own their own home. That is something which is part of the great Australian dream. And the truth is that the great Australian dream was becoming a nightmare, because if people can't get that access to home ownership, then it changes everything else in their lives. It changes the opportunity for their kids to get a good education. It changes their health outcomes. It changes where they can engage as a member of society. So what we are doing here is making a change that's been called for in the past by people, including the Shadow Treasurer, a change that's been called for a predecessor, the former Treasurer, the former member for North Sydney, who in his valedictory speech waited till he was leaving the joint before he said the system's broken and we should fix it. Well, we're fixing it.
Concluded. Give the call to the Honourable Member for Whitlam.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government making it easier for Australians to see a doctor for free? Why is the government so determined to lift bulk billing rates and strengthen Medicare after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Give the call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for Whitlam, because I know how determined she is to strengthen Medicare, and her recognition of a decade of cuts and neglect and what it did to the Medicare system under those opposite, particularly the years-long freeze to the Medicare rebate that was cheered along at the time by the now Leader of the Opposition. And it meant when we came to government, bulk billing was in freefall, Mr Speaker. It bottomed out at just 75% before our first investment to turn bulk billing around started to kick in, Mr Speaker. And I'm pleased to say that that first investment, targeted at pensioners and kids and concession card holders, has had an effect. And that rate for those Australians is now over 93% nationally, and in the Illawarra, in the seat of Whitlam and the neighbouring seat of Cunningham, over 94%, Mr Speaker. But we know that after that first investment, because of the Medicare rebate freeze, that bulk billing continued to decline for other Australians, Mr Speaker. And that's why last year, for the first time ever, we extended bulk billing support to every single Australian. And after that record investment, I'm pleased to report the latest data indicate that up from 75%, bulk billing nationally now sits at 84%, Mr Speaker. It is up in every state and territory, and I'm pleased to say the biggest increases are being enjoyed by those Australians who don't have the benefit of a concession card. The bulk billing rate for those Australians in Whitlam is up 25%, Mr Speaker. In the neighbouring electorate of Cunningham, up 20%, Mr Speaker. And what that's doing is delivering literally millions and millions of additional free visits to the doctor every single year. Now, this is the centrepiece of our agenda to strengthen Medicare, because for us, bulk billing is the beating heart of that great system. It's what it means to Labor and the vast bulk of Australians. But, Mr Speaker, it's not quite so clear what Medicare means to those opposite. Now, the Shadow Minister for Health was in a Senate inquiry a couple of weeks ago. She's been in the job for 5 years, mind you. The system's been in place for 42 years. She asked this question, Mr Speaker. She said of my department, she said, "I'd be keen to understand what Medicare means." Does the department have a definition of what Medicare means, Mr Speaker? Well, I'm pleased to say the department has provided the Shadow Minister for Health a definition of Medicare, and I table it for those opposite, because if the Shadow Minister doesn't know what it means, I suspect none of the rest of them do either, Mr Speaker. On this side, we know what Medicare means. It means the promise of universal health care, Mr Speaker. It means the promise that Australians anywhere can access the world's best health care, no matter where they live, no matter their ability to pay.
The Leader of the Nationals and the member for Goldstein were yelling continuously during that answer. It's completely unacceptable. You're both warned, so no more interjections for the remainder of question time. So if you interject one more time, you won't be here. Hope that's crystal clear for everyone. Good. Give the call to the member for Monash.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. On the Deep Bush podcast, filmed at the Lodge, the Prime Minister made a series of foul-mouthed, classless comments about women. Will the Prime Minister personally apologise to the Prime Minister of Japan, Her Excellency Sanae Takachi, for his disrespectful behaviour?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I reject the assertion in the question. Australia and Japan have never been closer or more strategically aligned. And my government has taken our special strategic partnership to new heights. And during the recent visit by Prime Minister Takaichi, we announced substantial outcomes, including a joint declaration on economic security cooperation, signalling our resolve to support each other in the face of economic coercion, including to consult each other on economic security contingencies.
We're not having those sort of interjections. The member for Casey is warned.
We released statements on enhanced defence and security cooperation, on energy security, on critical minerals cooperation and a new strategic cyber partnership. Prime Minister Takaichi is a friend of Australia and a friend of mine. Together we're focused on working together after 3 bilateral meetings to shape a free and open Indo-Pacific that is peaceful, stable and prosperous, as demonstrated by the outcomes in the visit.
The member for Holt has the call. The Prime Minister has concluded his answer. The member for Holt has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government's expansion of paid prac delivering real change by easing cost of living pressures, strengthening Medicare and building Australia's future workforce? What has been the response?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Holt for her question, and indeed just over a year ago Labor created paid prac, backing Australians who are studying nursing, midwifery, teaching and social work, so that when they're doing their places, they get paid for the work that they're doing. Now, most Australians, I think, would be surprised that previous to that, if someone is undertaking to be a nurse, a profession that's honourable, a profession where we need more of them, that they had to not participate in their part-time job, that they had to work out how they would get by, pay their rent, etc. But Labor made that change, and that change has made a difference for thousands of people. And I've met nurses and teachers who it has changed their lives. And now we're building on that success, delivering real change for more Australians, because we're expanding paid prac to a further 10 fields of study: physio and occupational therapy, clinical psychology and pharmacy, podiatry and speech pathology, audiology and radiography, rehab therapies, and for our future paramedics as well. Real help with the cost of living, real investment in Medicare, and real investment in skills in the health sector for the healthcare workers of the future. Those are our priorities. And it's just one example of how Labor governs, making a difference to cost of living pressures in the short term, but making a difference to the way that our society and economy functions in the long term, helping people under pressure here and now while building for the future. Now, I was asked about alternatives or opposition, and of course, at the last election campaign, those opposite promised to abolish paid prac. They promised to abolish it. Never a priority for the coalition, never a priority to build a skilled workforce, and of course, strengthening Medicare, as we just heard from the Health Minister, they don't even know what it is. So it's no wonder that it's not a priority. They want to just go back to cuts and neglect. Labor is delivering real change.
Before I call the honourable member for Warringah, I'll just do a few acknowledgements. I'm pleased to inform the House that present in the Special Visitors Gallery today is Honorary Professor Gabrielle Pursley AM, who was presented with the Crawford Fund for Food Security Medal last night at Parliament House in recognition of her exceptional contribution to international agricultural research and development for over 5 decades. And I'm pleased to acknowledge Councillor Jim Meddy from the City of Greater Dandenong Council and the Honourable Dr Kay Patterson AO, former Senator Victoria and Minister. Welcome to you all. Give the call to the member for Warringah.
To the Prime Minister. Amidst a 51% rise in home insurance premiums in 5 years, and with 1 in 5 Australians uninsured or underinsured, the Resilient Building Council rating scheme helped thousands of households reduce disaster risk and lower their insurance costs. Yet the government has allowed this scheme's funding to lapse on June 30. I've written to the government asking for it to be restored, but received no response. Is the government's position that households are on their own in dealing with escalating climate risks and rising insurance costs?
Call to the Assistant Treasurer and the Minister for Financial Services.
I thank the honourable member for her question, and she has a long-standing involvement in these issues, and I thank her for that. The Albanese government is committed to making insurance more affordable and accessible for Australian households and businesses. That involves a range of different approaches. One is this government is investing in the Disaster Ready Fund, which through the Minister for Natural Disasters and Emergency Services. That fund, at $200 million a year, is seeing the rollout of mitigation works right across the country. And that is something which is being informed by data from the insurance sector, the Hazards Insurance Partnership, which is world-leading. Whenever I travel to other countries, or whenever I talk to insurance regulators in other countries, they see what we're doing in Australia through the HIP as world-leading on that front. What we're also doing is strengthening the General Insurance Code of Practice. That Code of Practice is being finalised at the minute. For the first time, that Code of Practice will be approved by ASIC and will be contractually enforceable. And we are currently engaged with both consumer groups but also the insurance industry to make sure that there are a range of protections in that Code of Practice for consumers. In the last budget, we announced a measure that is really important to ensure that we will work towards greater price transparency in insurance. I am now going to lead that project and work with consumer groups and the industry and experts to make sure that we can work towards an insurance industry where there is regulation to ensure that there is much more transparency when it comes to the premiums that are charged, when it comes to changes in premiums, and that there is much more transparency when there is a reduction in risk, that is reflected in the price. That price transparency project is extremely important, and we have already begun discussions with consumer groups and with industry on that. This government has adopted an extremely strategic approach to these issues because they haven't arisen overnight. They've been getting worse and worse for decades, and climate change is making these worse and worse, as you know, but as those opposite do not accept. And that is one of the fundamental problems with their approach to insurance. But we are working very constructively with consumer groups, with academics, with experts and the insurance sector to make sure that we strengthen the regulation of insurance.
Call to the honourable member for Cornwall.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to support students training to be the frontline healthcare workers Australia needs? Why is this policy better than other approaches?
Call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Can I thank my friend, the cracking member for Cornwall, for his question? Mr Speaker, a big part of a lot of university degrees today is practical on-the-job training. It's all unpaid. You don't get paid for it, and often students have to give up their paid part-time job just to do it. Sometimes students have to end up paying rent in two places at once as well, paying rent where they normally live and paying rent a couple of 100 kilometres away where they've been sent to do their prac. That sometimes means students don't finish their course at all, and that's why we created paid prac. It started just over a year ago for teaching and nursing and midwifery and social work students, and it's working. It's providing real cost of living help. I speak to a lot of students about what they use this for. The most common answers I get are petrol and parking and something a bit more nutritious than 2-minute noodles. And, Mr Speaker, now we're extending that to 10 more jobs that are on the front line of our health system, to physios, to psychologists, to occupational therapists, to speech pathologists, pharmacists, radiographers, audiologists, rehab therapists, podiatrists and paramedics. These are the people who come to the rescue when we need them. These are the people who help you to learn to speak again after a stroke, people who help to get you back on your feet and get you back to work. These are the people who help to make Medicare work. But, Mr Speaker, as we just heard from the Prime Minister, not everyone is a fan of it, because the Liberal Party didn't have an education policy at the last election, but 2 days before the election they did release their costings. And guess what was buried inside that? A plan to get rid of paid prac and instead just add that to your student debt. So they had one education policy, and that was to increase student debt. But we fundamentally disagree with that. That's why we've cut student debt by 20%. That's why we're expanding paid prac to 10 more areas on the front line of our health system to provide those people with real cost of living support, to make Medicare stronger, to help the Aussies that have signed up to do the jobs that help all of us.
Call to the member for Herbert is warned. The call to the honourable member for Monash.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister apologise to the Prime Minister of Japan for his disrespectful behaviour?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I have a very good relationship with the Prime Minister of Japan. We have met on the sidelines of various forums, as well as I welcomed the Prime Minister of Japan here. During that visit, it was a very successful visit, and the relationship has meant that with purchases such as the Megami frigates in defence, for example, that is...
The manager on a point of order.
Yeah, it goes to relevant, Speaker, and I refer to a ruling from Speakers.
The Prime Minister has indicated he's concluded his answer. Okay. We'll move to the next question. I'll give the call to order. Order. When the House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Leichhardt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to Deputy Prime Minister, representing the Minister for Foreign Affairs. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering real change with greater cooperation and strengthened ties with our Pacific neighbours and broader region?
Call to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Defence.
Well, can I thank the member for his question? And last week he and I visited Thursday Island in his electorate in the Torres Strait, Australia's own piece of Melanesia, and I really want to acknowledge the remarkable way that he represents this very special part of our country. During the break, back on the 6th of July, our Prime Minister, along with Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka, signed the Vuvale Treaty. And in that regard, along with the Foreign Minister, I would like to particularly acknowledge the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs. That treaty greatly enhances our economic relationship with Fiji, supporting Fiji's digital transformation, its industry, providing more opportunities for Fijians to access the Australian economy. But most significantly, the treaty contains a security commitment between our two countries. Now, as one of the only nations that operates a defence force within the Pacific, to have this commitment at a treaty level now means that Fiji is just our fourth alliance partner after Papua New Guinea, New Zealand and, of course, the United States. And indeed, just 2 days after that, our alliance with Papua New Guinea, the Puk Puk Treaty, also came into force. Now, since coming to government, we have concluded a Treaty of Common Security with Indonesia, our alliance with Papua New Guinea. We are working on a security agreement with Solomon Islands. We've signed the Nakamal agreement with Vanuatu. We've enhanced our long-standing relationship with France, a NATO partner. We now have a new treaty, a new alliance with Fiji and an old alliance with New Zealand. This ring of countries surrounds our continent, and our government has done more to establish security agreements with these countries than any government in our history, and Australians are safer as a result. And this is all in the context of enhanced partnerships with countries from Tuvalu to Nauru to the Maldives, from India through Singapore, Korea and Japan, and of course today Vietnam. Now, our national security is founded on our defence capability, and we are increasing that as well dramatically. And it is also obviously grounded in our alliance with the United States. But our relationships with the countries of our region is fundamental to the peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific, and with that, the security of every Australian.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Can the Prime Minister tell Australians why his government is targeting women going through divorce or the death of a partner to raise revenue through his heartless widow's tax?
Call to the Treasurer.
Mr Speaker, thank you and to the Leader of the Opposition for his question. The issue he raises, which was the subject of a stunt from those opposite earlier today. Well, the reason I take the interjections, Mr Speaker. The reason it's a stunt, what they did earlier in the Parliament, Mr Speaker, is because they said there wasn't enough consultation, and now they're saying there's too much consultation. And that exposes the absurdity of the stunt that they tried to put on earlier on in the Parliament today, Mr Speaker. Is it any wonder that they're doing worse under this Leader of the Opposition than they were doing under Susan Lee? If that's the best that they can do, Mr Speaker. They said there wasn't enough consultation. Now they say there is too much consultation. Now, the government has been very clear that we will address this issue in the legislation which is currently out for consultation, Mr Speaker. Now, it wasn't that long ago they were saying consultation was important. Now they're saying consultation is not important, Mr Speaker. The draft legislation that we have released will ensure a property will keep access to negative gearing if it was owned on budget night or treated as a new build if the property was acquired from a spouse through an inheritance or a relationship breakdown, or where someone inherits an asset in which they had an ownership share. We've been very clear about that, and that's what the draft legislation, which is out for consultation right now, is all about, Mr Speaker. The final point is this. It's not unusual for tax reform of this magnitude to be legislated in stages, and that's what the government is doing. These changes don't come into being until the 1st of July next year, and we are working in a considered and a methodical way through subsequent pieces of legislation to get the implementation details right. That requires consultation, something that those opposite used to call for.
The call to the honourable member for Gilmore.
My question is to the Treasurer. What are the recent developments in our economy, and what does today's interest rates decision by the Reserve Bank mean for Australians?
Call to the Treasurer.
I thank the member for Gilmore for a question and for all the work that she does in her beautiful part of Australia. I can inform the House that today the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Board has held interest rates steady at 4.35%. This will come as a relief to Australians with a mortgage. It is a welcome decision at a time of heightened uncertainty in the world and persistent pressures in our own economy at home as well. Now, this is the second rates decision since the budget, and on both occasions we've seen rates held steady. And this decision reflects the fact that inflation has been coming in well under the Reserve Bank and Treasury forecasts, Mr Speaker. In the Reserve Bank's statement on monetary policy released today, they have downgraded forecasts for underlying inflation and they have upgraded forecasts for growth. In June, Mr Speaker, inflation fell again. That means that inflation has now moderated for 3 months in a row, but it is still higher than we'd like. There's still a lot of uncertainty going forward, and we know that people are still under pressure. Now, that recent inflation data has been better than expected, but the war in the Middle East is putting upward pressure on prices and it's weighing on growth around the world and in our own economy as well. Now, we did already have an inflation challenge in our economy, but the conflict is making that harder. And that's why, from an economic point of view, a proper, enduring end to this war cannot come soon enough. We desperately need to see an end to this war in the Middle East. Now, inflation has gone up since March in most major advanced economies, but it's come down here in Australia. When we came to office, inflation was north of 6% and rapidly rising. It's now much lower than that, similarly when it comes to underlying inflation. Now, the government's responsible economic management has meant the budget's much stronger and debt is much lower than what we inherited. That's why just last week S&P Global, the ratings agency, reaffirmed Australia's AAA credit rating, and that means that we are one of only 9 countries in the world with a AAA sovereign credit rating from all 3 major ratings agencies, and we've also got lower gross debt than every major advanced economy, Mr Speaker. Now, we know that people are still under pressure despite this welcome decision from the Independent Reserve Bank today. It is a welcome decision. It does come at a time of heightened global economic uncertainty. The government, for its part, will continue to manage the budget responsibly, will continue to help people with the cost of living in an ongoing and responsible way, Mr Speaker. And I hear those opposite interjecting throughout the course of this answer. They were desperately hoping for an interest rate rise today, and they are desperately disappointed that they didn't get one. That's the difference between this side and that side. We're for cost of living relief, they're for higher interest rates.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Labor's toxic taxes and 15 interest rate rises on his watch have completely tanked the housing market. Can the Prime Minister confirm the average new mortgage holder is paying $29,000 a year more in interest alone?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. What I can confirm is that we do understand that Australians are doing it tough and that there are cost of living pressures on them. But that's why every day we look at doing something about it, not just identifying grievance, but producing solutions. not protesting, arguing for progress as we go forward as well. And that's why every day we look to deliver real change, to make a positive difference, whether it be higher wages in aged care, childcare, 5 wage increases for the lowest paid workers, now more than $12,000 a year better off since 2022. Number of times that a coalition government, or opposition for that matter, has ever put forward a submission to the Fair Work Commission arguing for wages to be maintained in real terms? Zero. Never. Never ever. Just like income tax cuts. We know at the last election we went to them arguing for income tax cuts. They said they'd reverse them. They not only voted against income tax cuts in this chamber, they said they would vote and reverse them. Now, as a result of the measures that we put in place, every Australian worker got an income tax cut on July 1. Every Australian is benefiting from stronger Medicare as well, something that they don't even know what it is.
The Prime Minister will pause. The Leader of the Opposition, point of order.
Relevance, Mr Speaker. The question was about mortgage holders who are paying $29,000 a year extra in interest, and he hasn't even mentioned mortgage holders.
The Prime Minister, I'm going to ask to return to the question because the Leader of the Opposition is correct. He was asked a direct question about the issue of mortgages and interest rates, so I'm going to give the Prime Minister to return to the question.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Well, I was asked about interest rates and the impact that it has and what views would be. Well, someone in this place said on the 10th of November 2020, nobody wins from low interest rates. On the 23rd of October 2019, they said, at the beginning of this term, I deliberately communicated my concern about the Reserve Bank continuing to cut interest rates. Going back, in case you think that was an accident, in 2018, we need to create the policy settings to progressively increase interest rates. Money is too cheap, and it's time we did something about it around the policy framework. The question for this Leader of the Opposition, why did he make this man the Shadow Treasurer? Why did he make him the Shadow Treasurer? Who argued that interest rates were too low?
I'm just going to deal with one issue at a time. The member for Goldstein was yelling, and I think everyone heard me say if the member for Goldstein or the Leader of the Nationals were to interject, they would leave the chamber. Okay. So as a result of consequences for actions, the member for Goldstein will leave the chamber. And the Prime Minister has finished his answer, so we'll go to the next question. And we will now, once the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Jagga.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering real change for Australian families with expanded paid parental leave? What are the risks to this?
Call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you so much, Mr Speaker, and thanks so much to the member for Jagga for her question. I know that as a mum herself, she knows how important paid parental leave is for her constituents, and over 2,000 parents benefited in her electorate just last year from paid parental leave. I recently met beautiful little baby Zoe, Mr Speaker, who was one of around 460,000 children last year right across Australia whose parents benefited from paid parental leave. What's interesting about Zoe is she's the youngest of 3, and each time her mum, Anne, took paid parental leave, Anne got a bit more leave because of the changes that we have made under this government. Each time she received a bit more time and a bit more money, and that's made all the difference to their family. In fact, right across Australia, what we see is that parents are benefiting from more time. We are now at the full 6 months of paid parental leave. More money, so from the 1st of July, that rate has gone up again. Paid parental leave is now more than $1,000 a week. And, of course, since July last year, parents have been getting paid superannuation on top of that. There's more flexibility too, which is really important for families with young children, and more people are eligible because each year we're increasing those thresholds of eligibility. Thanks to the changes that this Prime Minister's made, that this government has made, families now get almost $30,000 of paid parental leave. That is an enormous change from 2022. It's almost doubled more than doubled since 2022. And it's the sort of help that families desperately need. You would think it's the sort of help that the whole parliament would universally support. Yeah. I am very sorry to inform members that that is not the case. We know, of course, that Shadow Treasurer has managed to not be here again when we talk about paid parental leave. We know what he said about it. But, you know, the Liberals have never liked it. Mums were raughters and double dippers. And One Nation as well. Senator Hanson has said that in 2017 she claimed that women get themselves pregnant for the money. She said this year, "Listen, love, you have the equipment. That's what you're here for. If you don't want to interrupt your career, don't have a baby." At the press club, she said the gender pay gap is all smoke and mirrors. Women take time off and they're not paid their wages because they're not working. Well, fair enough. We say it's not fair enough, that families need help. That is the time in life where they need the most help, where they've got new little babies, and we are proud of the fact that we have more than doubled that help.
Before I call the member for Ryan, I also want to acknowledge some very hard-working volunteers from the Lions Club of Lugano as members of the member for Banks. Give the call to the honourable member for Ryan.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. At the recent Labor National Conference, ordinary Labor members and Labor MPs pushed to hold a vote in support of a 25% tax on gas exports. Given that around 70% of Australians and now your own members support a gas tax, will you listen to everyday Australians instead of the gas lobby and implement a minimum 25% tax on gas exports?
Yeah, there's parts of that question the Prime Minister can't, due to party conferences under the standing order. So it's going to be a very broad answer because the question's just within a whisker of standing orders. The Prime Minister, I'll listen carefully.
I thank the member for Ryan for her question, but I am somewhat surprised at getting a question from a member of a political party who not only have secret conferences, had a leadership ballot in this building a few years ago where we only found out that there was an attempted coup many months later. What we do, in stark contrast, is have a conference that is broadcast live on national TV for all to see.
Order.
We have the election of 400 delegates and 400 proxy delegates who represent workers, who represent local branch members, who represent regions right around Australia, including, for example, in my great state of New South Wales, there are rank-and-file votes in every single electorate to elect a representative to go to, in this case, to Adelaide over the break in July. And it was an extremely successful conference because one of the things that shone through about that conference is that we in the Australian Labor Party are united about our views. We in the Australian Labor Party know what we stand for. And that was reflected in the platform that was adopted at the conference. Any delegate can come along, move whatever amendments that they like and put it to the conference. And I must say that there were a range of highlights to the conference, but we're united about wanting a strong economy that works for people. We're united about wanting to make sure that no one gets left behind. We're united about making sure that we deal with not just the challenge of climate change, but that we seize the opportunities of climate change action. We're united by making sure that we want every Australian to fulfil the opportunity that they have to have the best life possible through an education, whether it be early education, whether it be the proper schools funding, where we've delivered the Gonski reforms first spoken about in 2012, whether it be free TAFE, the Universities Accord, all of these measures mattering, or whether it be our place in the world, our engagement in our region, our engagement in the Pacific, our engagement through peace and security, that is a foundation stone. Our support for AUKUS, which was a foundation stone as well of jobs. We know what we stand for. Everyone gets to see it in full public view, and that's because we're proud of who we are.
The call to the honourable member for Sturt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. How is the Albanese Labor government working with states and territories, industry and the community to respond to the detection of H5 bird flu in Australia?
The call to order. We'll hear from the Honourable Minister for Agriculture, the Minister for Fisheries and the Minister for Forestry.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I do want to thank the member for Sturt for that question. I know that as a South Australian, her and other South Australians in this place are particularly concerned about the increasing number of detections in South Australia and indeed right across the country of the H5 bird flu. I know that so many members in this place have engaged because they are concerned about the impact that this will have in our country, and I do want to assure all members that we are taking this very seriously indeed and that we are acting. In terms of an update, there's currently 236 confirmed or suspected positive detections of the H5 bird flu in Australia. So 10 in Western Australia, 163 in South Australia, 4 in New South Wales, 1 in Queensland and 58 in Victoria. Our technical experts are working around the clock to confirm detections, and I've seen firsthand at CSIRO's Australian Centre for Disease Preparedness in Geelong in the last few weeks just how much they have been working around that clock. As I've said for some time, the arrival of the H5 bird flu in Australia was not unexpected and that we couldn't stop the migratory birds. I've also said very clearly that Australians should expect to see, sadly, more spread and larger numbers of wildlife being affected. We have been really upfront that there will be more large mass mortalities of native birds in Australia. We've seen the impact that bird flu has had overseas, particularly for wildlife populations, which is why we have been planning. We have invested over $113 million to strengthen our bird flu responsiveness and preparedness. That includes as part of our $2 billion in additional biosecurity funding. And it has $25 million that we're also delivering with the states and territories in terms of the current on-ground response for biosecurity resourcing. Whilst we can't stop the virus spreading amongst the wild birds, we can take action to protect species most at risk. And I'm pleased to advise the House that vaccination is now part of that response. Earlier today, alongside the Minister for the Environment and Australia's Chief Veterinary Officer, I did announce that the first bird flu vaccines are expected to roll out in coming days on priority native bird species. This is based on an agreed national approach and will be guided by expert scientific advice. It's a targeted approach that will mean states and territories are able to commence vaccination activities, initially focusing on priority species identified by the states and territories. This obviously builds on the work that we are doing with the states and territories and with industry to help manage the response to the H5 bird flu. I want to finish by reiterating that at this time there has been no detections in our poultry or our broader agricultural system and that the risk to human health remains low. I also again want to thank the Australian public for the huge role that they are playing and to remind them that if you see sick or dead birds or other animals, please do not touch them. Please avoid them. Contact thebirdflu.gov.au where you can actually record them and you can get the most up-to-date information in relation to Australia's bird flu incursions.
And to associate with the remarks, the Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. On indulgence, I'd like to commend the Minister for the manner in which he's engaged with the opposition in the manner of the H5 bird flu outbreak. From day one, the Minister's office has been available to my office and the members of the Coalition to seek information, particularly for those members who have had outbreaks in their own communities, and that is greatly respected and appreciated. I can assure the Minister and the Government that the Coalition will continue to act in a very bipartisan manner to ensure that any of the risks associated with this outbreak are well managed in the interests of the incredible Australian wildlife, but also our agricultural sector. I want to thank the Chief Vet, Dr Beth Cookson, for the briefing she's provided as well, and to all the workers on the ground who are doing everything they can to try and prevent further incursions and impacts on our agricultural sector. And like the Minister, I want to reassure the Australian public that there has been no impact on the Australian agricultural sector to this date. Our poultry sector, our eggs, all safe to eat, and encourage Australians to keep eating Australian-grown products. And again, reassure the House, reassure the Australian public the Coalition stands willing to assist the government in whatever way possible to try to minimise impacts. We certainly hope for the best, but we have to prepare for the worst. And I want to thank again the Minister for her willingness to keep engaging with the opposition in this regard.
Call to the member for Page.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Rents have reportedly increased by 10% since the budget just 3 months ago. Prime Minister, which of the following are to blame? A, record high immigration outpacing new home builds. B, Labor's toxic taxes on housing. C, the 15 interest rate rises under Labor. Or D, all of the above.
Order. Order. Give a call. Order. Members on my right will cease interjecting. The member for Griffith. The Treasurer has the call.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and to the honourable member for his question about housing. A couple of important points to make, whether it's house prices, auction clearance rates, rents or other indicators in the housing market. We'll get lending data later in the week as well, Mr Speaker. It's important to remember, as the Reserve Bank pointed out today and others have pointed out in their contributions, that there are a number of factors playing out in the housing market, whether it be interest rate movements earlier in the year, whether it be extreme global economic uncertainty. There are a number of factors playing out in the housing market, and that's why we saw some softening in the housing market before the budget that we handed down in May. That's the first point, Mr Speaker. The second point is when it comes to the changes that we made in the budget around housing, for the reasons that the Prime Minister ran through, to make sure that we can give first home buyers a fair crack in a housing market which has locked them out for too long. It's really important to remember that the Treasury assumptions in the budget about the impact on the housing market are assumptions over the next couple of years and not just over the first couple of months, Mr Speaker. We have had for some time now upward pressure on rents. We have had for some time now, partly because of a decade of neglect, we haven't had enough homes in our community, Mr Speaker. And we are taking the necessary steps. We are taking the necessary steps to build more homes because we know that is the best way over time to put downward pressure on rents, Mr Speaker. Now, when it comes to migration, I understand that those opposite want to go about this in the most divisive way that they can, but they need to recognise that net overseas migration has come down 45% since its peak. When we came to office, it was absolutely rocketing, and we have taken steps to moderate that net overseas migration number at the same time as we're investing almost $50 billion in the main issue in housing, which is housing supply. And so whether it's approvals, the investment numbers, the commencement numbers, they were going backwards when we came to office. We've been turning that around, and it will take time to see the better housing market that we want to see, whether it's in rents, whether it's the impact on house prices over the medium term, whether it's the share of first home buyers in the market. There is a lot of volatility there. A lot of that volatility existed before the budget, and we measure the impact of our policies over a period of the next few years and not just the first few months.
Call to the honourable member for Barton.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Assistant Treasurer and Minister for Financial Services. Why is it important that every Australian complete the census?
Call to the Assistant Treasurer and the Minister for Financial Services.
I thank the member for Barton for her question. She understands the importance of evidence-based policy and decision-making. The census is one of the most important snapshots that we take of our country. Every 5 years it tells us who we are, where we live and how Australia is changing. This is important because governments, business and community organisations use census data to make decisions that affect Australians every single day. It helps us understand where new schools are needed, where our hospitals and health services need to grow, where transport infrastructure should be built and what services communities will need into the future. And for the researchers and policymakers, it gives us a detailed picture of Australia that simply cannot be obtained anywhere else. The value of the census depends on all Australians taking part. This year, for the first time, Australians have been able to subscribe through MyGov to receive census updates and access an online form. Those who did not subscribe through MyGov will still receive instructions in their letterbox with options to complete the census online or by post. Each census takes years of planning, consultation, testing, community engagement and field work. That effort is necessary because the census works best when everyone is counted. The Australian Bureau of Statistics works with communities across the country, including people who can be harder to reach. Every person counted helps build a clearer picture of our nation, and that's why participation in the census is so important. Because whether you live in a capital city, a regional town or a remote community, your circumstances should be reflected in our great national picture. Accurate and complete information is vital, which is why it is so important to answer the questions thoughtfully and accurately. When I fill it out tonight, I will have to think very carefully about the following question. What are the main goods and services provided by your employer's business? I'm still deciding whether I should answer a fairer property market, providing five tax cuts in 3 different ways, or strengthening Medicare. But I'll let the House know which I decide on later.
Order.
Can I say, Speaker, the opposition's very excited by the census. It's good to see. The census will showcase the diversity of our great nation in occupation, gender, religion, culture or country of origin. I am proud that our party and our side of parliament is broadly reflective of who we are in this country. It's been 5 years since the last census and a lot has changed in that time. Can I acknowledge the hard work over a long period of time of the Assistant Minister for Treasury, who has worked for many months on this project and helped to deliver such an important thing. To conclude, the census is an important document for our nation, and I encourage everyone in our great country to complete it this evening.
Call to the honourable member for Wentworth.
My question is for the Minister for Resources. Renters expect to pay a bond before they move in and often a cleaning fee when they leave. But that isn't the case with oil and gas projects. Last month, another gas producer entered administration, making environmental clean-up, if it happens, the government's problem. The government has recognised the issue but not acted. When will the government ensure companies have to put money aside to fully fund the clean-up of their projects?
Great question. Call to the Minister for Resources and the Minister for Northern Australia.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for a question. I refer to that question. I think the member is referring to the voluntary administration of the Cliff Head project through Triangle. We are monitoring that situation and working with Core Courtesy administrators that reported to Pilot Energy, which is that company. On the 17th of July, NOPSEMA found General Direction 2118 and 1947 to be breached, and NOPSEMA is exercising its powers under the relevant Act to undertake actions where the breach directions to maintain critical safety and environment outcomes where required. But what I want to be really clear about is the Cliff Head facility is currently safe. It is not a crude production facility. The Australian Government is engaging with NOPSEMA and other parties in relation to the ongoing regulation and management of safety and environmental risks. There are no immediate risks in that regard. The offshore facilities are hydrocarbon-free. They stopped production just over 2 years ago. The wells have been shut in, secured, and they are remotely monitored. So, as to the cost of these things, I want to make it really clear again that taxpayers will not be left to foot the bill if companies do not do the right thing in respect of this particular project. But also, I'm sorry, I can't see the member to address her question at the moment because the Leader of the Nationals in the House of Representatives is in the way. So what I want to make clear is insolvency does not excuse title holders from decommissioning responsibilities, and the government is considering all enforcement options to hold responsible title holders and related parties, more importantly, or very importantly, accountable. The Australian taxpayer will not bear any financial responsibility for decommissioning offshore oil and gas projects where title holders have failed to provision and plan for these activities as they are required to do so by law. Before we came into government, the Labor Party in opposition agreed with the government at the time to implement legislation to make sure that there was a trailing liability for offshore oil and gas, because that is a jurisdiction where the Commonwealth has in this regard, and that is happening and has been implemented now. The government will continue to pursue all available mechanisms under the law to hold responsible title holders accountable for those offshore oil and gas projects. We will make sure they are safe for any people that are associated with them. Worker safety is of vital importance. Really importantly, the environmental side of this is very, very important, but this particular project is safe, and really importantly, the taxpayer will not foot the bill and the industry as a whole will bear the burden of the projects that they have left.
Call to the honourable member for Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering real change for Australian workers?
Call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Hughes for his question and for his commitment to delivering for Australian workers. And I'm pleased to report to the member for Hughes that the Albanese Labor government is delivering real change to improve and protect the pay packets of working Australians. We have, of course, backed and funded pay rises for early educators and workers in aged care. This important commitment finally recognises these workers who teach our children and care for our elderly. They have been undervalued for too long and they deserve a pay rise. Of course, this government has passed laws to make enterprise bargaining easier. Workers on enterprise agreements are benefiting from stronger wage growth. And of course, we've now seen a historically record number of employees covered by enterprise agreements. Our government has also introduced same job, same pay laws so that workers' wages could not be undercut by the use of labour hire doing the exact same job. And because of these laws, more than 8,000 workers are receiving pay rises. It was a great privilege to recently visit the Hunter, where I met with coal miners who told me these reforms are not only delivering pay increases of up to $40,000 a year, but they are delivering direct permanent employment. These laws are delivering not only fairness, but security for these workers. And of course, since the Albanese government came to office, we've advocated for low-paid workers each and every single year as part of the annual wage review. And it does mean now that our lowest-paid workers on the national minimum wage is now earning more than $1,000 a week for the first time. Now, our government has also legislated to protect penalty and overtime rates in the modern award safety net, ensuring these workers' pay packets wouldn't go backwards. And of course, we made deliberate wage theft a crime, providing an important protection for workers. Of course, we also introduced new standards to ensure gig workers don't have to rely on tips to get ahead. And this Albanese Labor government is also committed to ensuring that workers are able to get a fair go and are able to resolve workplace disputes swiftly and quickly. And that is why this Prime Minister announced recently that this Labor government will establish a Fair Work Court to make it simpler and quicker for workers to get what they are entitled to, and of course deliver a more efficient process for employers seeking workplace resolution. It is only this Labor government that is committed to getting wages moving and pursuing real change for Australian work.
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I ask further questions placed on the notice